Welcome back to this episode of the Healing from Lyme Disease Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Tom Moorcroft, and today I'm here with my great friend, Dr. Greg Ekell. He's one of my oldest friends in medicine. We go way back. We kind of got together in a small group, and really, I got to know him so well, and I thought that he would be one of the most excellent people to have on our summit because, he's been a naturopath for at least as long as I've been an osteopath. We think about medicine and healing and just living life in a very similar way. The word love will probably come up a lot in healing today. We're going to talk about bioenergetics, but one of the things that's so amazing about Dr. Greg, and I'm going to give him a chance to really share with you who he is from his perspective. But when we first met, he just told me about this amazing woman in his life, right? And just like this lady Soraya, who was the love of his life, and every time he talked, just lit him up. And shortly after we met, she was diagnosed and ultimately passed from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which most people haven't even heard of. But the thing that was so amazing was to see the grace with which Greg went through this and his family went through this process, and how he's turned this into this mission of figuring out unsolvable medical mysteries and turning them into solvable ones. And maybe it didn't work for Soraya, but there's always hope for other people. And the motivation, the love, and the gratitude that he brings to medicine is sorely missing. And so, Dr. Greg, I'm just so thankful to know you. I'm so thankful to have you here, and love for you to just share a little bit more about your story, where you come from, and how that shaped where you're at now as we kind of dive into our conversation about bioenergetics and vitality and healing today.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Tom. Instrumental life occurrences, happenings. As you mentioned, when we met, I was going through the throes of Soraya with, really rapidly progressing dementia. And she was young, 42. And I'd been in medicine at that point, 17 years. Currently going on 22 years in practice. At that point in time, I knew the medical system was broken. And to go through it with your loved one's life on the line is truly heartbreaking. And I always knew, I thought Soraya was 1 in a million, and unfortunately, the medical experts agreed with me on that. In that there's about 300 plus cases a year of CJD, that's mad cow syndrome in people. It's spongiform encephalitis, basically holy brain. The prions get in there, which are misfolded proteins, and create big open spaces in the brain. And it's not a very, it's definitely not a fun condition. It's an ominous diagnosis. When it gets put on the differential, you kind of have to just shake your head like, oh boy, there's no known, as of yet, known cure.
Right.
And I add that in because, I've been asking that question every day since, I was well positioned as provider and husband to kind of swing for the fence. I had nothing else. I mean, I had everything to lose. And with that, uncovered some amazing therapeutics. Definitely went through my stages of grief and loss and sadness, all of those things. And I know we don't do that well in our culture.
Right.
So now I'm able to provide that space for others as kind of a safe being that people feel like they're comfortable expressing that to me, especially when they know, even when they don't know. It's really interesting that way. It's like a magnet or a light beacon for, oh, there's a safe being I can open up here. But the whole process, Dr. Tom, it really, while tragic, it really gave me a deep appreciation for the preciousness of life, basically the miracle that we get to be here in this 3D process in these bodies, and the majesty of nature, with good friends and community. And, we don't really know how long we're here. And so in a weird way, it reinstated my faith in unity consciousness, of my faith in the oneness of all. And I just thought, gosh, this couldn't have been a mistake. Like, and maybe I'm just making this entire story up on top of this really brutal loss, and, so be it.
Right.
Because it is, I just thought, man, I think we must have written this before we got here, because this is tragic. As you mentioned before, I didn't even know that love could exist like that in the world. And then to have it and then to lose it. I've since gone on, I'm remarried. So I like to share that part of the story with people.
Yeah, right.
In time. But the legacy of Soraya lives on, and it's really around this component of, energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It only changes form. And, we had Rudolf Steiner at the turn of the century in the 1900s lecturing publicly about communicating with the quote unquote so-called dead. I mean, this was a physician, anthroposophical medicine, amazing brain, out lecturing in Germany on this concept of, we can scientifically show, energy changes form, but can't be destroyed nor created. So, really incorporating that in to my discussions with patients on online platforms, podcasting with friends, wherever I go, I think it's really not emboldened, but a little bit unleashed me of, when you lose a lot, you stop playing it small. You really want to speak into the truth, because again, you don't know how long you're going to be here. And why not shoot for the moon? And, for me, that means, free and sovereign beings, living a vital life. And, really wanted to bring this into this community and have this discussion with you, because we've had some really awesome offline conversations and we want to bring that online here.
Yeah. I think the thing though, Greg, is like when you point all this out, where you say like, you didn't know love could be that deep and that intense and that real. And then you have it, and then you kind of, you quote unquote lose it. But like you said, it's not really created or destroyed, and it can come around in a different way. And like, it was really interesting to see where being with you as part of that loss. And like I said, the grace is like the word that always comes to mind with you. Cause like, there was never any whining or complaining that I ever saw. It was always like possibility. But there was, and the thing in the Lyme community, I think so much, it's like we all focus so many, not we, but I mean, a lot of people focus on like the loss as if it's permanent and it's here. I'm like, it's a different experience, because then when I saw you with Kitty, you're like, oh my God, Greg's with another person. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Because, Jill and I mean, we decided to get married 2 months after we started dating, did it 7 months later, and it's 22 years later. And it's amazing, right? So, but it's like, once you know about the possibility of love, you can do it. And then the next thing I know you guys are doing is these like healing centers that are focused on bringing that unity, consciousness, and love. And that's why we have to have this conversation with this community is, yes, there's bad shit going on. And there's also this other amazing healing energy that can blossom through it. And you can learn so much about it. So, I mean, I'm just so thankful to be having the conversation. But where do you go? Because it was like, I feel like when we first met, I mean, prior to this whole thing going down, like you're doing really cool naturopathic stuff and you're helping people with allergy and you're starting to kind of get into the Parkinson's thing. But you were kind of like, I mean, I got this sense that you were about to blossom into something. And then all of a sudden all this happens, and obviously it ignited it. But what's that point that really, where you shifted into sort of bioenergetics and this unity consciousness? What the hell does that really mean? And why should everybody listening even tune in deeper to this?
Sure. Well, so the component bioenergetics is a study of energy, and really looking at it, I've always been into the energetics. I mean, I was, in 1992, I was a preschool teacher, and I was a Montessori Earth preschool teacher.
Nice.
And I like to say I was a Montessori child wannabe. My children went through Montessori education as a result of that. But I was watching, 4-year-olds being put on Ritalin in the early mid to late 90s, really. And I thought, man, this is tragic. There's got to be a better way to help these kids. And at the time, I was a young 20-something, vegetarian which I thought was very healthy. But I was really fatigued and run down.
Kind of know that feeling.
And, I was living in Portland, Oregon, still do part-time with my kids up there. And was directed to the naturopathic school. And I went in, they gave me a diet diary. That was new to me. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. It's coal and steel country. We didn't talk about energetics or, naturopathic or Chinese medicine. I go in there, they address my diet. They call me a junk food vegetarian with love, but, and it truly was. I was eating like French fries and frozen burritos thinking like, this is health food. Right. So I put vegetables in my diet and lo and behold, some real meat. Well, maybe I actually didn't go into meat eating at that point, but I just ate whole foods and my energy came back. And I thought, gosh, if I was going to go back to school, I want to be in service to people. I really got the energetics of the food at that point. Then I got into botanical medicine and Chinese medicine and acupuncture and qigong. So I've always been attuned to subtle energetics and the energetics of the body, energetics of the universe. This old saying of what happens in the microcosm in the body happens in the macrocosm in the universe and vice versa. So the energetics I've always been attuned to it, but it really, this process of losing my wife unleashed me to just be able to speak the truth about it of
completely freely, right?
Yeah, really, like there's nothing to lose. Like I already lost everything. So like, let's just go for it and speak the truth. And, when this component about what is unity consciousness. So the aspect of dis-ease, apostrophe or /ease, dis-ease, you're not diseased, you are with dis-ease, is really separation from source as best as I can manage it. 22 years into practice now is like, it's almost as if we incarnate here into this 3D plane. It's our curriculum for learning. Shit happens. And you get to choose what you want to do with that, right? Is it going to push your head underwater and sink you into victimhood? Or are you going to rise to the challenge, take heart, listen? And, like the old Cat Stevens tune is the answer lies within. So tuning in and so I chose that route. You know me, now the audience knows me. I'm a radical optimist under all circumstances.
Right.
And, so having that ability to look at, okay, the universe is happening for me. This is freaking tragic, this loss. And so why? And it woke, I wrote the story. And again, I could be making it up, but so be it. I made it through wholehearted and open-hearted really is the key. And really wanting to show up in a much larger place in service. So I've always been in service in medicine, but to even go bigger of like, hey, everybody goes with us. And what does that mean? How does that play out in practice? It plays out in, I firmly believe we have not been taught, nor do we know how powerful we truly are. There is not a metal, there is not a toxicant, there is not a bug, there's not an infection that is more powerful than the human being. And so what do we do, right? The root word of doctor is docere or teacher. So I educate people about that. Our job is to remove obstacles to cure and allow the innate intelligence to organize and get vital, where then the infections, in particular Lyme or co-infections, become irrelevant, or mold, or whatever the item is at hand. So often I see people treating bugs, treating labs, treating symptoms, and we see where that gets us. It's a losing game.
Well, it's interesting too, because this is like, I love this conversation because this is like been my whole thing. It's like when we talk about the truth about Lyme disease, like most of the time, the biggest problem is you and what society has taught us and what we believed from society. And what we're telling you today, and Greg, what I hear you say all the time is like, there's another story that you can tell yourself. And it's one of not victimhood, but something's happening. You have this choice, and you can harness the power of this self-healing by getting into that place, and it's like, I ask so many people, like, what do you love? What would you love to do? And it's like, I'm surprised at how many people have a hard time that they're so busy figuring out how to get better from Lyme, but I think about it as your operating system, because I want to really unpack this bioenergetics piece. But if you think about your phone, if your phone's not working, what do? You reboot it. And if that doesn't work, then you update it, the software, and then you reboot it again. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like that's a lot of what we need to do. We're spoon-fed. I mean, there's books out there about how you can't get better, why you can't get better, the conspiracy. This is great reading and all, but the problem is that's an operating system that doesn't focus on love and gratitude and possibility. And I always tell people, like, you're not going to forget that you're sick.
Right.
But you can forget that you actually have the ability to heal. Yeah. And so what is that place? Like, if we're looking at bioenergetics and we're saying, like, because, like, I agree. And I know that you probably hit a nerve for a few people when you said, hey, these co-infections and Lyme may become irrelevant. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I tell people in my story, I was 70 to 80% better before I actually met the doctors who I needed for 20%, 25%, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference than I need medicine all day long or herbs. So what are the places where I can be focusing and getting the bioenergetics, and how do I, like, raise vitality in myself so that, like, I can make these co-infections and other infections, like, irrelevant?
Yeah, I guess one way to think about it is we think of our body as a battery in electrical charges, and really maximizing the ability for the body to heal. So, look, I'm not saying that these things don't exist. I'm saying that we can raise your vitality, your energy level of your body, where then your innate intelligence can actually handle the issue at hand. Well, what are the things that drains the battery? Well, we have, the huge elephant in the room is trauma. I mean, we store trauma in all of our cells. Whether that be from childhood, you look at the adverse childhood experiences, the ACE scores.
Oh my God, right?
Everybody has trauma, right? You're born, that's traumatic, right? You could turn that story into, you won the lottery. You're a 1 in 500 million chance of being born. Like, wow. And then, what do we want to do with that? But you look at it, okay, it's clean air, it's clean water, it's clean food, clean environment. That's important. Being well hydrated, that's also very important. So, it's like the non-sexy stuff to raise vitality. And then you get into frequencies, light and sound. In informatics, you can program information into substances, into the body. We have an imprinter. We put it in IVs. We put it into water. We use infoceuticals. There's a lot of different ways that you can recharge your battery with light, red light. We use hyperbarics and oxygen. We use ozone. We have EBOO capabilities, which is extracorporeal blood ozonation and oxygenation. So it rolls right off the tongue.
Yes, it does.
There's all kinds of levels of intervention of, okay, physical matter to matter. And then actually bioenergetically, which is the frequency, right? Our mattered bodies, this is the slowest waveform. If we treat matter to matter, which means taking a substance to change the body, like an antibiotic or even like cat's claw or whatever herb, it's still kind of slow as molasses to get you there. Sometimes it's really important so your head doesn't go underwater. At the same time, I'm looking to expedite change for people, and it's really utilizing, the frontal cortex. So when you're in fear, when you're in anger, when you're in the limbic state, the sympathetic fight or flight or freeze state, you're not able to access your greatness, your frontal lobe. Now, I can hear people, I can see you rolling your eyes there in your living room of like, oh, that's great, Dr. Greg, but I have XYZ symptom and I can't think straight and I've got brain fog and I've got fatigue. And, if I push myself, I just crash with these symptoms. And I totally get that as well. And I know, we've successfully treated Lyme for 22 years without antibiotics in our clinic here. So it is possible. I see it happen all the time. And really, I've seen the patients that they collect all of the world experts in the Lyme world, right? Well, Dr. Greg, what are you going to do for me? I have 13 of the world's best experts and none of them have been able to help me. I was like, look, I don't want to become another doctor that fails you. So I'm not taking you on as my client because you already have all the best and the brightest and you're doing all of the things. So if it's not working, why are you still doing the same thing? So maybe it worked. Maybe we want to get curious. Maybe we should look at, maybe there's some possibilities here that I don't have to actually attack a bug or go to war. One of the messages that I really wanted to bring out today in this interview was, I really want to do away with this war analogy of we're going to kill the bugs and, we're going to kill the virus and we're going to kill the Lyme and the co-infections and we got to kill those bugs or the parasites and got to get rid of them. It's like, no, what if they were actually doing something to protect the innate intelligence until your vitality got to the point where it could handle the bugs themselves? So it's not basically, you're not exporting your power to some substance or some therapy or some technique. It's actually bringing back the power into the embodiment of your vessel, which is, getting in tune with yourself, like actually inhabiting your body. It may not feel comfortable today, but if we can get you in there to bring awareness to your body, because so many people vacate because of those traumas. So I kind of went down a long-winded response there, Dr. Tom, but bringing it back. So there's traumas, adverse childhood experiences. There's epigenetics. It could be our great-great-great-great-great-grandmother went through some famine or freeze or, whatever the environmental component or some, other tragedy in the family lineage that set off epigenetic change that is expressing today that weakened your vitality. Well, you can do some testing around that. You can look at that. It's exploring. It's made our jobs much harder incorporating all of those aspects into care.
Well, it's interesting because I agree with everything you're saying. And I think some of the really big things are a lot of people in this field get mad at the IDSA, the conventional group of physicians, whether they're general medicine or, like I said, like the infectious disease people, or they get mad at big pharma. But then they just change big pharma and IDSA and they put it, ILADS, they put on, Lyme literate doctor. And so they trade one group of labels for another group. And I'm like, wait a second, but you've just continued to give your power away.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that for me, I found, and I'd love to hear what your experience is, because I think this is where you're really hitting the nail on the head, is when you actually look inside yourself, there's two things that come up. One is it can be scary as shit because there's a lot of stuff that maybe the people around us that we grew up with didn't give us the tools to deal with, like those traumas, like those epigenetics. And the other part is really about, that's a lot of responsibility. So in like my world, like I love the fact that I can change my family's epigenetic history, and everybody wants a quantum leap. They want fix right away. And I go, for me, and this is where I'm interested in how this resonates with you, Greg, is my quantum leap is the moment you make a decision that you're worthy to heal and receive love.
Yeah. It's really, that's
when it changes, right?
Yeah. And I've had 70 and 80-year-olds in my procedure room where we're doing intentions and they're in tears saying, I'm not worthy of healing. It's like, they're 70 and 80 years old, 7 decades, 8 decades on the planet, every day thinking that they're not worthy of healing. And so that self-worth component, of course you're worthy of healing. You're here, right? It was a 1 in 500 million chance of being born. You made it. You are here. And in that unity consciousness, we're pretending to be separate in this reality right now. And it's beautiful expression, and everybody's uniquely them, bringing their own gifts, but having that component of love for self-love. I mean, you mothers in particular, you look at moms, and a lot of them, they come last, right? The family, the kids come first, then their spouse, and then themselves, maybe, but they're exhausted by the time they get there. And
Right.
when I ask moms, like, well, what happens if you go down? Like, who's driving the boat? Like, what happens to the ship? They're like, oh, that, it would crash. Like we'd all, it would all go to hell. And, it's like, okay, well then, like, let's put you first, actually, it's the old adage of, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then you can help others. Well, that component of, yes, of the, open-hearted love beaming, which we can do, I love doing that every day professionally, no matter where I go, to see, well, what kind of response does that get in the world? And a lot of times, everybody's on their device and they're distracted or busy. But when you start connecting with people on that level, in particular yourself, that is really amazing work. And that is quantum work right there, because it doesn't seem like you're doing much. Like, oh yeah. I mean, it used to irk me in my 20s. Like, well, do you love yourself, Greg? Like, what the heck are you talking about? But in essence is like, yeah, you need to have that self-worth, that self-love. Now, a lot of times because of traumas, we're never modeled that. We don't know what that is. That component of, you don't know it until you have it. So there is all of those aspects, and it's good to have when you have the awareness and you're seeing this conversation here, and then you can ask yourself, well, what does that mean? And when I say ask yourself, like, that would be, for me, is to get quiet, maybe light a candle and watch the candle burn, the flickering light, and ask your heart, do I love myself? And then just be quiet and see what comes up in the mind. Now, of course, there'll be some chatter, maybe. I know for me, my voices now are saying, okay, that's ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? But just let all of that go, like, clouds in the sky, and just watch that candle flicker. And maybe even ask yourself again after the chatter, like, okay, what does that look like for me? Do I love myself? Am I worthy? And just see. And you could get a journal out, you can write, however you do that for yourself. And maybe you've never done any of that for yourself. But it is getting quiet, being still, not, you're not looking for that answer. It's not out there, it's in here. And so asking that of your intelligence, and start getting into that dialogue with yourself, because the answers come, and it's remarkable. They may not come when you're sitting there, but you might notice, like, then your child comes up to you and says something, and it's like, oh, wow, like that's kind of weird. Or there's some serendipity that happens in your life, and oh, well, that's curious, isn't it? And so I actually ask for serendipity. I ask for those occurrences, because I'm a dense meat body here. I want signs that it's real, right?
Well, it's interesting too, Greg, because I'm just chuckling over here, like, because the last, like, it's like I do my breath awareness, I do my breath work, I do my meditation, I have my intentions. And sometimes when stress hits, like you have chronic Lyme disease or some other label someone gave you for how you feel and what's getting in your way of healing, like I would say I've got some stress and I had a few things go on at work this year that I would have preferred to go a different way. Yeah. And then I sat down a couple of days ago and I go, you know what? I'm trying too hard, because I sit down, I do the work, and I want the answer, even though I teach this and I know it. Yeah. So the reason I'm laughing over here is the other day I just said, I'm just going to let it be. And I'm going to let it come when it comes. And so I've been doing my work, and I woke up this morning about an hour earlier than usual, wide awake, wasn't tired, went to bed later than usual. It was really interesting. And all of a sudden, download of one thing to do. And then, and it really solved the problem that I thought was it really wasn't a problem. I just didn't think of the answer because it was solved so quickly. And then I was like, then it snowballed because I was so thankful for that. And I took action on it. And as soon as I took action on this, something else fell apart for an event I'm doing in a couple of days. And I'm like, oh my God. And then literally we got on the call just when we were kind of talking before this. And I'm like, I just mentioned to you, I don't know this. And boom, you just had some idea that was just like, and guys, this is how it works, right? You have to just say, one of the things I love to tell people is just when you do exactly what Dr. Greg just said, and you get one little coincidence in your life, savor it. Like you would take a glass of wine if you like wine, or something else you love to eat. Just really let it mature and experience all the flavors, or take that breath of fresh air in the sun and let it just absorb into your body. When you do that, that's your gratitude saying, thank you that this happened. You've just acknowledged divinity in your life, and boom, then it comes again and again and again. And I find that, Greg, is like where we find with our Lyme patients, like if we can do that next step all the time, give them, because a lot of people feel like they get kicked down a lot, right? But it's like, if you look at it the way you're recommending it, I really think that that's where you start to see there's actually a lot more really wonderful things happening within these apparently sort of gray clouds, you know?
Yeah. It's that glass half full, glass empty. And you have the prerogative of however you want to look at it is the way that you should look at it. I'm just offering, if you start looking for the good, for what is this teaching me? What should I learn out of this? You might be surprised at what the answers are.
So, and how do you look at, like, because I've had this experience. Let's say up until now, your life has been pretty shitty. Like most people would come from the outside and look at your life and say it's pretty shitty.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Tom.
Not you, Greg. I'm just saying, like, I've had this personal experience where I felt like a whole bunch of, I was sick for 13 years. And you're like, when you start getting sick when you're 23,
yeah,
you're not too happy about the 13 years. Because that's kind of like the creme de la creme of
right.
But how do you go back and rewrite this past? Because we talk a little bit epigenetics and the whole family, but I think about loving yourself. Do you have approaches? Do you find that, like, well, two questions. One is, can you change your story? Can you rewrite your story? And if so, how would you do it? And the other part too is just kind of like, well, let's hit that one because I think that's a really important topic.
That is. And so the past doesn't exist. Even though we carry it with us so many times. You look at neuroscience, what is it? 86% of your thoughts are the same ones you had yesterday, and you're expecting change. It's like, there's no way that's going to happen. If you are thinking the same thoughts as yesterday, change is not going to happen because you have so much evidence, like this is reality. So, one component, I love Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I know you talk about it in your meditation classes, and, he's just one of many, but he is really out there teaching people some different techniques. I know you do that in your, I think, meditation courses. And knowing, the sage wisdom of the eternal present now is all we have. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist. And so it just, how much weight do you want to give it? Like, you can't go back there. You got to kind of forgive that aspect and let it go for opportunities for a new possibility. And so that, I guess, is how I would answer it. It's much, easier said than done. I'm not saying that this is easy work, but you know what? It's what we're supposed to be doing. Like, I kind of give the analogy of the gilded cage, right? So many people have safety. They've created this reality, this story of them. I get on my kids all the time about this, of like, really, you're anxious, like you have anxiety. Okay. does that mean you're forever labeled with that? Like, is that what we're doing now? Like, we're just going to label ourselves and now that's my identity and now I become that. So the gilded cage, it's so safe and comfortable in here, but I'm miserable. I'm in pain. I'm suffering, but I know it, right? And then there's the gate. The door is open, but it's wild out there. There's unknown. It's uncertainty. There is, you don't know. I mean, it's like the wild seas is the way I view it, of like, we're going to be sailing in the wind, and like, it can get quite treacherous out there in the open seas. But you know what? That's like, you're doing something with your life. You're living. Like, how you playing it safe or small stuck in suffering? Like, how is that serving you, your family, your community, your loved ones? Like, it's not. You're suffering. Again,
right?
If you can choose to do that, like, we have free will, and by all means, like I learned early, I don't push or pull people in therapeutics. Like, they've got to be all in. They want to make the change, because I can't do it. I say I do a lot of nothing all day, right? It's the body, the innate intelligence, and the medicines working together. I can hold the space or allow for the possibility. I get my pom-poms out and cheer a lot. And, so it's along those lines, we have the eternal present now. And in that is limitless possibilities, especially as we bring the quantum physics into the day-to-day of clinic or online, and what that looks like and how it plays out. And it may not look exactly how you think it's going to turn out either.
Well, I think that's one of the things, like, a lot of people think it means like I come up with a picture of the future and it's going to be exactly the way I envisioned it in my limited.
Boring.
Right? Well, so I think you hit on something really important, Greg, is like a lot of you talked earlier about fight, flight, and freeze. So a lot of people in our community know a lot about, polyvagal theory. And one of the things from moving out of that frozen, hopeless, helpless, numb, immune suppressed state is safety. And to move, the problem I have with safety, though, and I think you highlighted it earlier, is we have that sort of limbic brain, which is our reflexive, protective reptilian brain that just wants to keep us alive. But then we have our front up here where we're thinking about it and we go, what? I am safe. So what are you telling me? I'm not getting better. But when we pull out really quickly, and like you said, if you're not all in, like, our job really as a teacher is to bring them along and to support along the way and catalyze and create a place of love and hold that space. Because I love what you said was familiarity, right? It's like that comfort zone. When we ask you to change from a familiar, even pissy, horrible familiar state to an unfamiliar, potentially much better feeling state, but still unfamiliar, it's scary to your reptilian brain. And then you reflexively fall back. So how many of you guys listening have been like, you've been going and going, you're getting better, you're making that next leap, and right when you feel like you're about to have the breakthrough, you fall way backwards? I mean, I know I do this even in my life with all I know, but I catch myself. And I think what you're saying, Dr. Greg, really like resonates with me, because when you're in that comfort zone, that comfort zone is a place where you're going to stay stuck. So what are the other tools, or like, what do you guys do to kind of help people as they're moving, as they're expanding their zone of comfort? Maybe not getting out of it, but at least starting to move.
Yeah. It really is meeting people where they're at and what resonates with them. I mean, we have a full here in Park City is where I'm coming at you here. One of my 2 clinics currently. We have a whole sound healing room for group processing work. We do frequencies. That's the sound. There's toning. You can be silent or just, feel the vibrations of the sound. We do ketamine assisted psychotherapy as another way that we help. Now, again, I don't want people to outsource like, oh, it was that medicine, but sometimes I can help lift the veil to allow them to see themselves as they truly are.
I think of it like this catalyst, Greg. And I mean, that's what I hear you guys doing. Like, you catalyze where the body's stuck, you catalyze self-healing, you get the hell out of the way. And ketamine can work that way. Guys, you got to check out Greg's sound healing sessions too. I mean, I've been there, been part of it. I just want to like highlight that, because that is like the resonance, because it's not just the vibration of the bowls, it's that intention of love, right? So
Yeah, the
I cut you off, but I'm
intentionality.
just so I want to really highlight that, because there's a difference between an intervention and catalyzing self-healing and helping it go to the next step that it's working on its own. So you're not doing the work for the body. You're just helping it. You're like putting a chalk under a wheel that's spinning in the mud almost.
Yeah, really, really reminding the intelligence. And sometimes it's bringing in a new conductor for the symphony. There's reprogramming that can happen to the system, but that's really that's the individual doing the reprogramming. Is just us providing the right information in at the right time. Meditation is such, breath work. I mean, these things, red light therapies, hyperbaric oxygen. I mean, all of these things are to create the safe environment of a feeling of envelopment, intentionality with, open-heartedness and trust. I mean, there is building that relationship. I call myself a turtle practitioner or provider, in that I'm a firm believer slow and steady wins the race. I mean, you don't want to willy-nilly jerk around with this stuff, because you're right. The limbic system gets triggered like hair trigger, and it will set people way back, or, like the sea anemone that just kind of retracts into itself.
Right.
And so it's that dance. That's the art of what we do. Deep listening and presence of just allowing somebody to be actually heard on a deep, deep level. And I mean, I'm so humbled by, the ability for people to come into spaces and share some of their, like, that they've never told anyone else on the planet. And to be able to create an environment like that is so humbling, because it's just such an honor to be present for that. And so that, that is so really fulfilling to me. It's what gets me up. We look to create those environments one-on-one, in groups, online. I think that we don't have to be limited by traditions there. I think that we can really take it really, even now we have community watching your summit, and having that shared space, that awareness, the time spent together, all of that does matter. And, again, coming from the facet of, we don't know how long we're on the planet, not in a rushing way, but just in a presence and an awareness, knowing, like our hearts are the portal for healing, and really helping people get into brain and heart coherence. That really does help expedite the up-leveling of humanity, consciousness, healing, etc. So, really coming from the heart, opening the heart. I'll incorporate now, you all listening are love beamers too. And so you can just open your heart and beam love. And with that, it comes back to you, because again, we're just pretending to be separate in this reality. That's that old saying, I am another you, you are another me. And there's symbols to represent that. And it's this ancient transmission that has made it to today, that I think that we are, coming back around to, and really, bringing more awareness to it.
I love it, man, because it's like, there's so much of what I've even seen, like in the Lyme community over the last like 15 years, where, there's stuff that we've been noticing clinically that now science is catching up with. But you're talking like ancient, like thousands and thousands and thousands of years old technologies that of just being present and noticing what's around you. And we're now seeing that science is catching up to this. They know that it's real.
Yeah.
So, I feel like we could do this conversation absolutely all day long, because anytime we get a chance to talk about love and possibility, I'm all in, because that's what really turning into my heart and it was amazing. As soon as I said yes to my possibility, my worthiness to healing, even though I did it accidentally at first, all this possibility and all these amazing people like yourself started to flood into my life, and all the opportunity I needed for healing presented itself, but it wasn't until I said yes to myself. And as we kind of land, you said like, you'll sit down, and I'd love to make this a little concrete for some people, because I think something you mentioned earlier could be done every day with the treatment that they've been currently prescribed that would supercharge it. But so I guess my question is, how do you go about setting an intention? Because I know a lot of people are probably sitting there, oh, I got to go. I don't want to go through the trauma again. I don't want to do this. And I don't think that's what you're saying. I think you're setting the intention for becoming present and healing. But how, if you were to guide our folks to like how they could at home set an intention that would be constructive to sort of maybe optimize or supercharge what they're already doing, how might somebody do that?
Yeah. So really posting or talking in the positive. It's not on what you don't want, it's on what you want. So, energy flows where attention goes, or the chi flows where your attention goes. So you want to focus on the things that you want. So if that is, I want more energy, I want clear thinking, sharpness of mind, I want more strength in my body. Those are the things that you want to focus on. I want, just like that, I want, and it's okay to want those things, because guess what? You're worthy of them. And so having that ability, and see, even in that process, if you are suffering or in suffering, look what comes up for you on, we call them limiting beliefs of like, oh, well, when I get there, then I can have that. Or when this happens, then that will happen. It's like, right. Well, why are there limits on that? And can you just say it outright on, I want to be a free and sovereign being with full abundance and flow. Like, why not? Put that out there, and then story, right? That's the intention, right? And if we have more whole beings on the planet, we create heaven on earth much quicker than we ever dreamed possible. So the concreteness of it is, and I would suggest even putting pen to paper, of write it out. There's something odd that happens when you take a pen and put it on paper. Even if it's not legible, it doesn't have to be legible. Your intention is in it. Your intention's in it. And but doing that, it becomes more real. It becomes like, oh, it's here in the 3D world. It's out of my head, and I can see it visually here. I think a lot of people do that with vision boards and cutting pictures out and putting that out to represent what they want, that intention of intentionality. And I would say just get curious and run some experiments for yourself. You don't have to be a naysayer about it. Just, don't knock it until you try it, type of deal.
Right. Well, there you have it. I mean, the thing really is like, give it a shot, because you are worthy. You're worthy to receive that healing. And like, I just want to book it. I just, everything you're saying, I love so much, because it's like the want. It's like, there's this thing in our society that like wanting is bad. Why? And it's like that. I was taught, growing up, like people who want stuff and have stuff are bad. I'm like, why? Why can't you want something? You deserve it. Now, I don't go and get something I want at the expense of harming another human being, because there's enough abundance and love for everybody. But yeah, like I really think what you're saying about being in the present moment, allowing the past to be in the past, the future to be the future, because they're not in the moment. And then just recognizing that you deserve to be healing. And if you want something, it's okay, but really look inside. Like, I just love that, sitting and really learning to listen, so that you can know, because most of us have been trained out of listening inside, and we just go with the first thought. But we're talking about the energy of your heart radiating and allowing that to kind of be your inspiration, not just the words that come in your head. So really just sit with it. And Greg, I mean, I hope that everyone watching this has been so motivated. And I know exactly where you are because you're right down the road. So I'm about to come over. But it's like, I really like, for people who want to know more about your work, both online and in your clinics, where can they find out about you more? Because I think you're going to have everybody wanting to come be vital and hang out with you guys.
Oh, lovely. So bevitalpc.com, naturecuresclinic.com. You could also just search Greg Ekell, Dr. Greg Ekell, and What the Health is the name of my podcast as well. We'll give a good bonus here as well. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Tom, for hosting this summit and getting this word out, and all of you for tuning in. Much love to you.
Yeah. Well, great. Dr. Greg Ekell, thank you so much. And guys, like, this is the merging of sort of that traditional, conventional approach to healing and supercharging you as that divine being of light and love that you are. And as you know, through the whole summit, this has been my mission, my personal mission. This is how I healed. This is how I help other people heal. And when you apply all the things that Dr. Greg Ekell has just shared with us, this is where not only do you see these amazing changes in your health, you're going to surprise yourself in all aspects of your life at how it just takes off, and life just, no matter how good or bad physically it is today, how you're going to feel. And that's really what Healing with Lyme Disease and this whole summit is about. It's not just about focusing on that concrete piece. It's about up-leveling all of ourselves together as a community on this planet. So, because I think the toxicity around the entire planet, it's like what Greg started with. It's like the microcosm and the macrocosm are kind of unique reflections of each other. And what I see outside in my world, I notice that the only thing I can change is within me. And that is so powerful, because when I change within me, I can change all around me. But it really starts with coming back into your heart. So again, Dr. Greg Ekell, thanks for sharing the heart and bioenergetics and vitality with us. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Healing with Lyme Disease Summit. I'm Dr. Tom Moorcroft, and I can't wait to see you next time.